Welcome to Customer Service Academy Radio with author and customer experience expert Tony Johnson. Tony will share his vision for successful customer service, leadership, and business excellence, and speak to some of the most impactful leaders in business today. And now, here's Tony Johnson.
Hello, everybody. Customer Service Academy is on the air. I'm Tony Johnson, your customer experience speaker, consultant, and trainer. Today's episode coming to you courtesy of Ignite Your Service Training and Consulting, helping you be the brand that customers love and where the best talent wants to stay. And folks, head on over, take a peek at my website, igniteyourservice.com/summits. I am going to be hosting some amazing summits over the summer, over the fall. They are going to be destination summits. We are starting in Lakeland, Florida, Orlando, Florida, and Tampa, Florida, before we branch out to Vegas and Chicago and potentially New York if they go well. But head on over and sign up today so you can be notified when those dates drop. But all that said, today we have a very, very special show for everybody. We are welcoming Amy Wiggins onto the show. As the president and CEO of the Lakeland Chamber of Commerce, she is dedicated to creating a climate where business can prosper. To accomplish that mission, she and her team, they focus on the advocacy of pro-business policy and initiatives, connecting businesses to resources and strengthening leadership development programs. She's a native of Plant City, graduated from Florida Southern College, and lives here in Lakeland with her husband, Michael. Amy, welcome to the show and thanks for being on.
Oh my gosh, Tony, thanks for having me. I'm sorry that that's my bio. It does not roll off the tongue very easily. I need to revisit that. Maybe I will have my intern, ChatGPT, work on that for me.
Yeah, it's the best intern ever. Also, Claude, if you're playing with chats out there for a minute, Amy, Claude is my new favorite AI.
Okay.
So if you haven't gotten on and kicked the tires on it, it is really, really good. I've been using it for a lot of great stuff. It's great for building presentations and reports and stuff. So if you haven't checked out Claude, go kick the tires on that one. It's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. We've been having a lot of co-pilot conversations in the office and also with our board of directors. So that's where I've kind of ventured into, but I will do that. That's the whole point, right? They're out there for to check each other, right? Not just to check ourselves. So yeah, appreciate the recommendation.
Yeah, and the thing is that they're all good at something. Every one of them has a skill set, from Grok to Claude to ChatGPT. They're all good at something specific. So finding it's like building a team. One of these AI guys I like to listen to talks about treating AI as if it were a coworker or a part of your team, and every team member is good at something different, and AI is no different.
That's fantastic, and it's really valuable to have folks like you who are working to try them out and help the rest of us know that, so that we can right size our expectations, right? Because that's always a little bit of a challenge. It's like running and my husband. My husband is a runner, so I don't have to know anything about running or recovery equipment or massage guns or any of he's got it all. He'll tell me what to do and point me in the right direction. So we all need that expert. So thanks for being my customer experience and my AI expert, Tony. Absolutely. You just got a new label.
Absolutely, Amy. I appreciate that. And just so everybody knows, Amy and I have worked together quite closely with the Lakeland Chamber. I sit on the board of directors, and Amy was nice enough to invite me onto the board of directors at the Lakeland Chamber. And they are such an innovative and partnership driven organization. I have been excited for a long time to make this interview happen. And we are going to kick off with the question we ask everybody, Amy. So it is always where we kick off. Our audience loves to hear about stuff like this. And we've got a lot of small business owners out there in the universe, both in Lakeland, in Florida, and all over the country and the globe. So the question we always start with are, what is a great customer experience? What is great hospitality? What does that mean to you, Amy, personally or professionally?
Yeah, so I think probably personally and professionally, those things blend, right? Because what I want for myself, I want for every visitor that comes to Lakeland. I want for every new team member that's recruited to the area, or I just want that same feeling. So thinking about that, for me, I think a great customer experience is based on both relationship and influence, right? So it's its own little mini leadership journey to me, because a good customer experience causes people to feel seen and heard, whether it is, I don't want a lot of sprinkles on my ice cream, but I really like the red ones. Or it is, you really need new tires, and I know that's going to cost $60,000, but we're going to help you figure out how to pay for it. It's that connection that we're able to make with people that we don't know, but we understand and empathize with where they're coming from. And then on the influence side of things, we're able to influence their response and their reaction so that we can mitigate some of the challenges. Or we're able to be really good at upselling to that fancier bottle of wine, right? That influence. So for me, I would say it's really about both that like instant relationship and then the ability to influence so that that natural empathy that's there creates a sense of comfort and the ability to create some sort of change in the person across the counter, at the table, wherever that customer is meeting you.
And folks, if you're writing stuff down, you ought to be taking notes on this. The part that I heard that really I heard empathy in there. I heard personalization in there. I heard caring in there. All of
Mhm.
those things that make people feel like they belong. And that is the whole idea of experiential hospitality out there in the universe. So that is a great, great start. Amy, you've had quite the journey. We were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. Can you talk to us about your journey that led you to the Lakeland Chamber of Commerce? How did you end up where you are now in this role?
That it's a little disjointed, but whose isn't, right? So for everyone out there, I have a religion degree. I don't have a business degree. I wasn't an entrepreneur in the natural sense of things, but to some of this conversation around people that helped me belong, right? The places where I found connection, the things that I knew. My mother was a principal secretary. I grew up with a single mom. She worked in a school, and the one thing that I knew was that I was not going to be a teacher. That was not in my spiritual gift set. And so then the closest thing that I could do to something like that, but that also connected me with the church that I grew up in and the tribe that I had there, was to have a religion degree and do some sort of Christian education, youth director, ministry kind of thing. And so that's what I did. I stayed in my little circle, and I moved from the big city of Plant City to the bigger city of Lakeland and went to Florida Southern College. And right out of school, I had a job at a downtown church that was really struggling because downtown churches, like a lot of downtowns, had experienced that same urban sprawl. Big church plants were moving into next door where the neighborhoods were, next door to where the malls were. And so this church was really centered around a handful of families. And so I was able to work a lot on some intergenerational programming and things like that. And it was really tough to bring change into that space. And so I always tell people it was the very best job I could have had out of college. And it was also the very worst job I could have had right out of college because I wasn't ready to manage through all of those personalities. That's not something that they teach you. They don't teach you relationships in college, except now apparently they have some sort of class called interpersonal communications, which makes my brain hurt a little bit because I feel like that's just humaning. Like, why do we have to teach people how to do that? But that's a sidebar that we don't need to to go down the interpersonal communications class. But that was something that I realized I enjoyed the relational nature of that, but I wasn't ready for the influence that I needed to have. I didn't have that skill set. I didn't have that muscle to influence things and change them. So I came back to Lakeland and worked for the YMCA for a little bit and managed through some teen programs and sports programs, gymnastics, after school, that kind of stuff. And then because I know none of your listeners were really smart 25-year-olds, right? No one was ever a really smart or principled 25-year-old out there. And I couldn't tell you why, but I quit my job but I know it was for a good reason because I was very principled. And I realized that that was probably the dumbest thing I could have done because I also at that time had a mortgage. I was like, well, this is disappointing on a couple of levels. But I had helped to start a Young Life group, and my the person who'd helped to start Young Life went to church with someone who worked for the Chamber of Commerce, and he was looking for somebody who could sell memberships. And I said, I can do most things for a paycheck. So I came and I met with him, and I had known about the chamber. We had worked together through the Y on some of their advocacy things with our youth and government program. But I didn't really appreciate the full breadth of what the chamber could do. And he hired me. He wasn't supposed to, but he did. And so I spent the next 10 years learning what the chamber was and absolutely falling in love with it and recognizing that it is just at its core one big community of people who want to succeed in business because they want to make a difference in their communities, right? And I think sometimes that gets lost in that conversation about free enterprise and about business, because sometimes there's a disconnect between the intention behind those folks that are starting businesses. And so I love to be able to champion why it matters, like why business is the foundation of our thriving economy, why free enterprise is important. And those are all things that I've learned in my career. So yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of fun. And I looking back realized I've always spent my career in some sort of a membership organization where people are and organizations are buying in because they see the value and the opportunity of coming together and want to create something bigger than themselves. And I know that living in Lakeland gives me an advantage in that space because Lakeland's a special place. It doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet. What we have and what we do and how we interact with one another makes my job a lot easier than other chamber presidents and other spaces.
So you did go to the symphony for a while and then
I
come back,
did.
right?
Yeah.
What did you take away in that role at the symphony? Because it seems like they're all sort of these member civic community type organizations. Any takeaways from there that you brought with you when you came back to the chamber a few years later?
100%. So we at the chamber, through our leadership programs, our staff programs, we've really built our communication strategies and our understanding of one another around the DISC profile. And so for those who are familiar with it, there are four letters, D, I, S, and C, and the D is relatively dominant. The I is influential. So D is relatively dominant. They're the people that don't want to know how you got there. They just want to know that you got there, right? Don't give me, if you've got to tell me something, put it in bullet points. Just give me the answer. The I, they're really influential. So they're tend to be the more flamboyant folks that wear the bright colors. They're the life of the party, but their communication style is very relational. They're the ones that want to tell you a story about everything. And the D's really hate that because they just want to know, like, did you get the sale or not? And the I's like, oh my gosh, but it was so cute. And they had the puppy dog and it was so sparkly. And then the S is really steady, and they tend to be the ones that are focused on those relationships to get things done. They're the consensus builders. So they are the ones that in a meeting will look and say, Tony, you haven't spoken in a while. What do you think about that? And then the C's are really conscientious. They are making sure that all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, that you are not going to be out of compliance with something. And they want all the detailed bullet points about how you got there because they're going to go back and check your work to make sure that you're not getting anybody in trouble. So I am a natural DC, off the charts, which is weird because it involves both is everything right and is the decision final, right? It's just, it doesn't, like, those things don't often go together in the brain. But my I and my S were almost negative. Was terrible at working with other people. And we were talking earlier that I part of being in like conversation and community really drains me. It's a natural part of my job, but it causes me to flex my outside of my natural behavioral style. So I will say that I say all of that to say that the thing that I learned at the symphony the most is that artists are mostly eyes. They are very people driven. They love being a part of a group. They also really love things with precision. But they are not always good at consensus building because, much like a restaurant, there's a head chef, and everybody in the orchestra is doing what the conductor needs them to do. They're all professionals. They can make a tiramisu without that direction, but unless the head chef is setting the menu, they don't know what to make, right? So it's the same thing in a symphony orchestra, but building their consensus ability helped me to build my consensus ability and learning to manage a board of high performers who have really different experiences, a lot of artists on that board. That also really helped me build my S. So that's the biggest takeaway that I got from the symphony was a toolkit that allows me to be more intentional and find greater value in bringing more people to the table, which is helpful because, as you know, Tony, we have a board of 40 volunteer directors, which is a lot to manage unless you are really hyper purposeful about engaging everyone in that way.
It's funny you mentioned the DISC program. I am a split personality. I tend to play in D and I pretty
Uh-huh.
well. And so it's just a mess in my head, Amy, most days.
I
But
know.
yeah, and the other piece that I loved about your story about the symphony and people is there's a great story, and it's just a quick one about the Boston Symphony. And if you know anything about symphonies, of course you do, Amy, but when in the
Mhm.
audience, everyone's lined up, first through 12th chair, and your 12th chairs are really, really good, and they just sometimes lack the X factor of the first and second chairs, which are the
Right.
rock stars. But there was a conductor in Boston that got his 12th and 11th chairs interested and participating in how to play certain pieces and they're getting their contributions. And he said
Mhm.
anytime they're able to use an idea from a 10th, 11th, or 12th chair, for the next 6 months, they played like first chairs because they had
Yep.
a seat at the party. And he
Yeah.
was famous for trying to, most conductors are just like, listen, the first five I care about, the next five or seven,
Right.
please show up. We love you. You're really, really good. But I don't necessarily need to hear much from you. But when he started engaging the entire row of folks, he ended up with, in some cases, an entire row of first and second chairs because they just played with
Absolutely.
that X factor. It's a story I love,
Yeah, that's
and I
cool.
use it in leadership development workshops. It made me think of it when you were talking about that.
Yes, that's very cool. It's true. Yeah.
So speaking of teams, when you came on board, kind of post COVID and as things were sort of picking up and we were trying to figure out what we were all going to do with our lives and what it was going to look like, you've built a very, very strong team with a real member focus. What was your strategy and intentionality in doing that? And in some cases, you brought them in and got them ready on the job in some cases as well, and have really I've seen the growth because I've been a member for, gosh, probably going on 10 years now. So I've sort of seen, pre Amy and post Amy, right? And it was it
Yes.
was it was great before, but the way that you come in and sort of put different pieces in place to highlight the member experience and brought people that, sort of fill gaps. And what was your strategy? How did you do that?
Yeah, if I knew that, I would totally bottle it, make it available to everybody. I think when I started back, I was gone from about 2015 to 2020, 2022 when I was at the symphony. And so I did come back at the beginning of 22 and I have one staff person still today that was here
Right.
when I came back, and I can never get rid of her because she is the highest eye on the planet, and people think her office is a gift shop. So it would take her 3 weeks to move out if I ever had to get rid of all of her sparkly things. And also, I could never. She is one of those that has absolutely grown into her role, not dissimilar from that 11th and 12th chair story, right? The I think the secret sauce is that we live in this community and when we can talk about our work in terms of value to the people that we live next door to, or the people that cut our hair, or the people that make our food, when we can talk about our work in terms of the benefit that we have to the rest of the community, we have a greater buy-in in that. And no one's job in this building is just checking a box. Everyone, we're too small a team with too big a responsibility to just have people that go through tasks on a daily basis. Everybody has a buy-in. The first person that I hired was a director of business resources, and that's largely because the the board had told me that the expectation of our membership was that they wanted business resources, they wanted education and training and understanding of how to be better business owners. And so I found someone that wanted to learn how to do that. But Tony, to your point, like there's not a class on chamber in school. There, you don't get a certification, like there's no licensure to be a chamber president. Everything, and if you've seen one chamber, like they're kind of similar, but they're really hyper focused on what the community needs and who the people are in the community. So in my space, I have chambers that are really heavy into the tourism aspect and may even be the recipients of tourism development dollars. And then we don't get any tax money at all here. Everything that we do is funded by our membership. So it has been an absolute journey, but I will say that I can't do this alone. So I have hired really great people. I have paid them well. Because I will say this to anybody who is listening, nonprofit is not a business model, it's a tax status. And we were operating as though it were a business model when I came on board. And we're not doing that. We're in business to make the right decisions for the community, and in order to do that, I need great people. So I found great people. And I pay them well. We have incredible benefits, and beyond that, they have the ability to make mistakes. They have the opportunity to build programs, and they recognize that where we're going is as much up to them as it is our membership. And they've learned that they don't, the hardest part of hiring a staff for a volunteer-driven organization is that volunteer work. And so that's taken us the longest because that's just not natural for most people. Most people are hired to do a job, they do the job. And I think even in larger corporations, that collaboration is a learned skill, right? Like we had the opportunity last week to tour some renovated space for like Publix, our local grocery store, our semi-local Southeastern regional grocery store, that like their IT and their finance people work in. And they had originally designed the space with a lot of cubes and then a handful of huddle rooms for individual phone calls or spaces where you needed to be quiet. And what they learned was that they got such better results when people collaborated that they went back to the drawing board and took out a lot of those individual huddle rooms and put in 3 or 4 person meeting spaces, collaboration rooms, so they could foster that so that when people run up against a challenge, they have a space where they can go and meet with more members of their team. But it is something that has to be guided because most of us are not naturally going to ask for help. We're just not. That's the human condition, which is also why the whole business resources thing is a little bit of a challenge. Business owners are very proud and absolutely should be. And we have to work on changing that culture, that there are no stupid questions and everyone in our space has been there and done that. Let them help you. So we always say that my staff jokes at me because I tend to be very food driven. And so we always talk
Aren't we
about,
all? Aren't
aren't
we
we all?
all?
So we talk a little bit about like sneaking in the broccoli with the cheese sauce, right? Like we're going to do something super fun and then accidentally teach you something. It's part of it, whether you want to or not, but we know that we got to get you there somehow. We got to get you there with donuts and coffee, but we'll teach you something along the way.
Great. No, I appreciate that. And again, building that team just has been, just such a strong journey. And I've been a member of a lot of chambers, and it is the people at those chambers that make you want to get involved. And I always
Mhm.
talk to the folks at our new member coffees and stuff like that, that you're going to get out of it what you put into it, but you
Yeah.
also have to have a team on the ground that's going to want you to put into it. It's going to want you to put that effort in. And I love the fact that you address pay, because it's always the dirty little thing no one wants to talk about. Everyone wants
Yeah.
to talk about culture and engage. Yeah, and all that stuff's really, really important. But people
Hmm.
have to pay bills too. And so you at least have to be competitive in the
Yeah.
market if you want to compete for talent. It's
Yeah.
just trying.
I can't be a model to my business community if I'm acting like if I'm scarcity mindset, right? Like we talk about that a lot in the nonprofit space, that scarcity mindset. And small business owners sometimes have that as well, right? Because it is like it's terrifying being a small business owner. It's terrifying sitting in the corner office with the responsibility to sign the front of a paycheck. But that also gives you an awful lot of perspective on the world and the way things work. And it makes your ideas and your contributions that much more valuable. And that's why we talk about the importance of businesses being engaged in community and finding solutions to things, because that can't be government's job.
Why are chambers so important to the communities? And I guess more importantly, how do you communicate that value to members so they understand that it is worth being a member? Because I think that's the secret sauce for a lot of
Mhm.
member organizations is communicating the value so that folks want to be a part of the party.
Yeah, I, thanks for that question. And I am still working on it. I mean, that was my primary job as someone who sold memberships for a living. And then I was in communications. It can be a challenge. And I think what we are really, um, we try to set expectations first, right? And I always tell people that the value in being a chamber member is that chambers work for you and they also work with you, right? We are not, we are an organization of member businesses. It is not Amy's job to make your cash register ring. I want your cash register ring, and I'm going to give you the tools to make that happen. And this is something that we all are working on together. I want everybody's cash registers to ring, whether they are your competitor or your partner, right? So that's the value of a free enterprise system, is that there's equity of opportunity for not just entrepreneurs, but also for their employees. And so it is a constant reminder. And a lot of that has to be a part of our staff training so that they understand that when we talk about the value of membership, we don't talk about benefits necessarily. We talk about being in relationship. We talk about learning things. We talk about advancing the strategic plan. When I came here in 2022, we were finishing up a 3-year strategic plan, and our strategic plan was all about us as the chamber. And really important stuff, right? Really important stuff like revenue development and greater operations and board engagement and all the things that businesses should do. I have a unique opportunity to change the world right here because I have businesses with me doing that. So our strategic plan for 2030, we shot far out, is not focused on me, right? If I do stuff right, what's happening in the strategic plan will come to fruition. So we're talking about what the chamber is going to do and how the chamber is going to interact with other businesses to make sure there's a climate where business can be strong, where we're going to find every possible way that we can to amplify talent pipelines and workforce development. And if that means second chance hiring, we're going to talk about that. We're talking about early learning in part of that. Like who that doesn't make your cash register ring, but it sure as anything in 18 years will make sure that those employees that you're hiring have the ability to look people in the eye and have a communication across and solve problems, right? All of those skill sets are learned before you're 5. The ability to solve problems, the ability to have agency, to button your own britches when you get to kindergarten. Those are things that your brain develops before age 5, and we got to focus on that. And I'll get off that soapbox. But then we also talk a lot about, so our third goal is engaged leaders, because we recognize that there are people out there that are making decisions and making policies. And I won't say this in Lakeland because it's not the truth. Our Lakelanders are incredible, and our elected representatives are all small business owners and have signed the front of a paycheck. But that doesn't always happen. And sometimes there are some spaces where things get a little confused. And so we're watching to make sure that stormwater fees are in line, and that Lakeland Electric has a representative from the commercial rate class, and that all of the things that need to happen to make sure that our policymakers understand the value of free enterprise and the importance of small business and big business, right? Not we are across the board. And then ultimately, our last goal is to create a prosperous community, because again, we understand that equity of opportunity doesn't yet exist. And we want to do everything that we can as the chamber and as the business community to make sure that everyone in our community has the same chance to succeed. And there are barriers to that, whether we like to talk about them or not, because they're not the fun things to talk about, like pay. They're not the fun things to talk about, like poverty. But they matter, because I was talking to someone last night. There's not a lead server career path in high school, right? But that person's critically important. And it is a career path once you get there, but no one is going into their sophomore year in high school. Like, no high school is saying, this is how you become a lead server. So that eventually, because then the career path beyond that, which is a challenge that a lot of our businesses don't do, is set out a clear career path opportunity within their business structure. I think we've got a couple that make that happen. But if you start at server and you work your way up to lead server and you work your way up to a management role, and then ultimately, do you become a managing partner? What does that look like? How are our businesses talking about that career ladder?
Amy, when you think about it, it does come back around to how do you help the community thrive? And I can see why it would turn into this spider web of conversation, because once you talk about one thing, it's like you throw the stone in the pond, right? And all the ripples
Right.
that come out. And so the community's so interconnected that way that very much it does come back to education and conflict resolution being baked in before you're 5 years old, because you know how to control your temper at preschool. I mean,
Right.
all those things. So I can see how, in your perspective, that could happen, because you've got so much that you're thinking about in terms of this ecosystem.
Yes.
And so to that end, the last of our big questions before we go into the lightning round, could you quickly just give a couple of bullets about what chambers, and this is $1 million question. It's going to be another one. You're going
Yes.
to say, well, if I knew the answer to that, Tony, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. But what do chambers and member organizations in general need to keep in mind going into the future to stay relevant? Because it's a different animal than a lot of things. If you were just going to give one or two tips before we jump into the lightning round, what would you say to them, Amy?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to say two things. The first one is that please remember I used to run a symphony orchestra, right? And how many times over the last 250 years has someone said to us, orchestra is dead, the symphony is dead, right?
Timothy
So,
Chalamet even said something very similar like 2 weeks
oh,
ago, right?
I know, right? And yet, here we are, right? If we can build successful organizations that are able to celebrate the music of folks who died 400 years ago, and at the same time celebrate the music of people who music that was written 4 days ago, like that's incredible, right? So when I talk about, when someone asks me a question about relevance, I always get a little prickly, because I think it's all about the value that we're bringing in. We recognize, so we're very fortunate. We have a handful of professional organizations that support our work, and we have partnerships at the Florida Chamber and the U.S. Chamber. Well, our national association is called the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, ACCE, and every 10 years they put together a Horizon report, and they work with a futurist to identify the top things, influences that will impact our work as chambers of commerce and as business communities in the next 10 years. And the first one is, and I believe pretty steadily has been, belonging and gathering.
Yep.
We are people who need people. And if we can figure out in our space how to continue to bring people together, that's our superpower. The thing that sets chambers apart is that we have the ability to bring people from disparate spaces into the same place. We exist in an advocacy role that other folks don't, and that also continues to be a primary driver of what chambers need to do, why people need chambers. That we exist in a space right now that's very us versus them, and it doesn't matter who us or them is, right? We all find ourselves in these kind of conversations that boil down to something similar to that. And I think that civics space is one where chambers can also excel. We don't have to understand which article of the Constitution tells us what we do and why we do it. We just have to understand that I always tell my staff, again, food related, like Doritos doesn't make just one flavor, right? If Doritos only made nacho cheese Doritos, can you imagine what would their net worth be, right? But they like I like nacho cheese, and I forget sometimes how much I like Cool Ranch because it just sounds weird. Why would you like Cool Ranch? But then you taste it and it's really great, and other people think it's awful. And that's okay because there's choices and there's opportunity. And we're going to build a relationship with a Doritos flavor that we love, which will never be super spicy, right? Those people probably are not human and shouldn't be on the planet interacting with the rest of us. They just belong on like a little super spicy island all by themselves.
Now, maybe there's a place for the spicy people too, right? But no, and I think that's right. And I think the thing that you said best there, and I think this is the takeaway for the folks that run these types of organizations. And this is not just chambers, folks. This
No.
is, I'm a member of the CXP, the Customer Experience folks. I'm a member of the National Speakers Association. There are tons of member organizations out there. And how do you bring people together to create a community where people feel like they belong and they can get stuff they need to be better at whatever your thing is? And it sounds so simple and it's easy to say out loud, but that's what I heard there, Amy, was bring people together and give them stuff they need and listen to them.
Right.
And folks, just one last thing before we go into the lightning round. The one thing the Lakeland Chamber does really well, everyone out there has survey fatigue right now. No one wants to take surveys. Everyone hates them. Trust me, I've done the math on this. However, what the Lakeland Chamber has started doing, and I talk about this actually in my talks, is that they send out every week in their weekly note a one question survey. And they mean it. Like you don't click it. It's not like when they trick you on the cruise survey and you answer the question and then there's 86 more when you go to the website. No, this is truly click yes or no, and then it takes you a page where you can see the results, and that's it, and it's genius. And I will tell you, I do it almost every week, and a lot of people do it almost every week, and they've gotten great results. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that because I thought that was super, super smart.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate that.
And folks, if you are loving this conversation, and I know you are because I am, please make sure that you leave 5 stars, say something nice, drop a comment, help keep Customer Service Academy one of the top podcasts for customer experience and hospitality in the country. And thank you to FeedSpot. We have climbed up into the top 5 on the FeedSpot list. So thank you so much for that. But Amy, all that said, this has been great so far. Are you ready for the lightning round?
I'd probably not, but we're going to do it anyway. Let's go.
All right. 5 quick questions, 5 quick thoughts to get to know you just a little bit better. What's your favorite hobby?
I like eating queso.
Love that. What's a book that every business leader should read, but not spicy queso?
No, not spicy queso. So I will say because it's on my shelf right now, Traction. Really enjoyed Traction and the focus on creating measurable KPIs because I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have as a society right now is we rely on water cooler data. Somebody called it me search. We rely on me search and not actual research, not actual data. So I think that's probably my top pick right now.
This one's right in your wheelhouse. Favorite food?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely queso. I do love a taco. If I could live near, that's why we don't live in Austin, because I would eat tacos 6 times a day. It would be bad.
Most interesting job you've ever had?
I will, honest to goodness, Barnes and Noble. I was in charge of the children's section at the Barnes and Noble while I was in college and loved it.
I always tell everybody my most interesting job, I would love to say this one, but actually my most interesting job was the night shift cleanup at the ice cream factory that I used to work at between high school and college, because when you would come back in, all of the ice cream was still in the tubes and you could taste anything soft serve that you wanted because it all comes out like soft serve and then gets hard in the freezer. And so
Yes,
that was like the most interesting, best job I ever had because it was like all the ice cream I could eat at 18, and that was a windfall.
no doubt.
And then is there anything what are you binge watching right now? Anything on TV or Netflix or movies that you're binge watching right now?
We're terrible at that. My husband and I are of an age where we're still like, what's on tonight? Because we are it's terrible. We're so bad
You sound
at
like you pull
young
out the TV
people.
guide, Amy, to see what's on.
I know, it's so bad. But so we do have our nights of things, and we're kind of going back on some stuff. We're big British TV fans, so we like to also measure it out. So like when the new Midsummer Murders season was released, or the new Father Brown season was released, we right now it's Death in Paradise is the new season is finally on BritBox. So we measure it though. So like Tuesdays are one thing, Wednesdays are one thing. Yeah, we don't binge watch things. I
Fair
know.
enough. We are Graham Norton fans, so we like British TV
Okay.
here. He
Yes.
was one of the guys I studied when I started doing podcasts a while back, because he's a very good interviewer,
Yeah.
and he's funny and quick on his feet. So Graham Norton, a great British show that I just love. And if you have Amazon Prime, folks, there's a whole channel where you can watch old Graham Norton reruns on there, and they are hilarious. So, Amy, this has been great so far. Thank you so much for being on today. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about the chamber, if they want to join, all those kind of things? Where should they go?
Listen, so they made my email address so easy. I can't forget it. It's president@lakelandchamber.com, which means our website is lakelandchamber.com. So yeah, we'd love for you to engage with us. Check us out. We're on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and you can see some of our small business of the month recognition highlights there. I don't talk a lot anywhere else, but here I save all of this goodness for Tony. So you don't have to listen to me anywhere else on any of our channels. You get to see all the rest of my amazing team.
Fantastic. Well, this has been great. Amy, thank you so much for being on today.
My pleasure, Tony. Thanks for having me. It's been a ton of fun.
And we will, folks, drop all those information pieces that Amy just shared down in the show notes. You're going to be down there leaving 5 stars anyway, so you can click on over and take a look. But I will put all of that in the show notes so you can link over to that. But folks, that is our show. Remember that we are in the year of experiential hospitality, where strategy becomes experience through intentional design, people, and connection. Trust me, that's going to be your competitive advantage because you do not want to be a commodity out there right now. And also, if you want to learn more, Amy mentioned a great business book. You can also go pick up my business book, Together We Serve, on Amazon.com. You can get it on paperback, digital, or audiobook. Search Together We Serve by Tony Johnson, and you will find it, I promise. But until next time, I've been Tony Johnson, your customer experience speaker, consultant, and trainer, reminding you to keep your customers and your employees, like Amy said, at the center of everything you do, because that's where the most amazing things are possible. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will talk to you next week.
This has been Customer Service Academy Radio with Tony Johnson. Tony is available to speak at your event, meeting, or workshop. Have a powerful customer-focused day.